He said, you don't want to work for me anyway. You hated working for me last time. He said, I've been trying to tell you this, but you haven't listened, and maybe you'll listen this time. He goes, you have a skill, but you're not using it correctly. And those words really mattered because he said, you've become a really good photographer, and you're settling for $32,000 a year. You're settling for what they're willing to pay you. But you literally can go right now and you can go shoot weddings and you can go shoot sports. You can do anything you want on your own terms, but you're settling for security and benefits.
You're listening to the Profit by Design podcast, episode 48. You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire.
Is your business running your life? Are you fed up with working crazy long hours only to lay awake at night worrying about cash flow or feeling totally angry and frustrated over what your team isn't getting done? If so, listen up. I've got something I want to share with you. At Tap the Potential, we have our small group coaching program that is designed for business owners just like yourself who are done. You're done with the way things are going and you're ready for a change, and not just any little Band-Aid change. You want a life-changing business transformation. That's what we specialize in at Tap the Potential. We turn life and cash-sucking small businesses into highly profitable, great places to work, and then we send those business owners on a 4-week vacation while the business runs without them. If that sounds good to you, I invite you to check out our small group coaching program at Tap the Potential, where we integrate Profit First, the Pumpkin Plan, and my book, How to Hire the Best, into our small groups to produce these transformations. All the while, we're working with you to be the leader you need to be to create this business that can run on its own while you have more life. Check us out, tapthepotential.com. Profit designers, on today's episode, I'm bringing you a conversation with Vincent Pugliese. Now, there's a very important reason I have invited Vincent onto the podcast. And before we get to that, I want to read to you his professional bio. Vincent has a bachelor's degree in communication from Ohio University, where he was named national champion for the William Randolph Hart Photojournalism Championship prior to graduation. He's photographed for all the leading wire services in various national and local publications throughout the U.S. He's also photographed all major sporting and news events, including the Super Bowl, the World Series, the NHL Final, the NBA Conference Finals, the Kentucky Derby, and even WrestleMania. And now, despite all those professional accolades, that's not why he's on the podcast. Vincent and his wife were stuck in dead-end newspaper photography jobs. They were in debt, they were stressed with a baby on the way while making $15 an hour. After winning the highest award in his field, Vincent was offered a 3% raise. He knew at that moment he needed to make a monumental change. And 1 month away from their first baby being born, Vincent and Elizabeth started a side photography business out of desperation. In less than 4 years, they grew their business to pay off all their debt, over $140,000 of debt, including their home, and left their jobs for a life of freedom. And that, Profit Designers, is why we have Vincent on today's podcast. Vincent and his wife are committed to living a life of money and time freedom, and they share their journey, their experiences, and their life lessons with others to show them how they can do it too. Vincent has written a book, Freelance to Freedom, the roadmap for creating a side business to achieve financial time and life freedom. It's a very compelling read. And on today's episode, I get to talk to Vincent about some of the life lessons he's learned. And I hope it inspires you to start asking some powerful questions for yourself about what's possible and what opportunities exist for you. So with that, let's turn to the conversation with Vincent. So welcome, Vincent. I'm so glad to have you here with us today. First off, let me back up and give our profit designers a little backstory about how we know each other. So we met last year at Podcast Movement. Philadelphia. And you were introduced to me by a mutual friend of ours, Nick Pugliese. And I was so impressed by the way you guys hung together and your mindsets. All of you, like just, we Donna Lyons, myself, and Mike Bruno, we got to spend a good bit of time with you guys. And it was so refreshing to be around you because you guys are positive, you're energetic, and you're up to good things in life. And the thing that really stood out is the go-giver mentality that every single one of you seem to really live.
Yeah, it's funny because you talk about me and Nick, and if Nick's listening, what you didn't hear was us ribbing each other the whole time because we give each other a really hard time. The two of us, for some reason, we're both East Coast. He's Boston, I'm New York, and we just have to go at each other with that. But outside of that, yeah, we try to live this life because I've learned, I was very selfish for a very long time. Like that was who I was. It was like, even being a photographer, it was like, what shot am I getting? Like how I need to get this. You're in my way or you're preventing me from doing what I need to do. And it was very much I need to get mine first type of mindset, especially coming from New York. Like you got to survive. And it wasn't until I started reading people like Zig Ziglar and Seth Godin and generosity and seeing the way they had lived their lives and the way they run their business. And it wasn't a give with expectation type of thing. This is a way of living. And, Zig Ziglar, you can have anything in life you want if you just help enough of other people get what they want. And it took a really long time to learn this. So yeah, and the thing is, when you do that, you wind up hanging around with better people, more generous people. That's kind of where I found myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to have you come on the Profit by Design podcast because on Profit by Design, we talk a lot about living a lifestyle and building our business to support our lifestyle and being intentional about that. So, from a business side of things, we teach profit first. You ran into Mike Michalowicz at Podcast Movement. He was there with us last year. And I know you guys are big fans of profit first yourself. So putting the profit first in the business is really about elevating. I, as the entrepreneur, have intentions of how I want this business to run and support my lifestyle. And you, with your work, are very much an advocate for freedom and intentionally designing your business and your life in that way and managing your money to support freedom. And you have a book out that's, I think, recently released, right?
Last January 2018.
Okay, so fairly new, Freelance to Freedom. And this is captivating reading, I tell you. You're telling your story, you're sharing, and you're very real in there about what your early years were like and how you've changed. And one of the things that really kind of caught my attention right off the bat is you were reluctant to write the book.
Yeah.
So I'm an author too, and I know I was reluctant to write my book. My book changed my life. What was your reluctance about?
You had these limiting beliefs. Who am I to write a book? Like, why would anybody want to read this? I didn't feel like a success. I felt like other people wrote books, right? Not me. That's kind of what it felt like. And, I was kind of scared of the whole process. What do you even do? I was just really pushed back by it, but it wasn't until so many people kept saying to me, like, my friend David, like I wrote in the book, my friend David Burke said, you have an obligation. This isn't like a thing. This is like, you have an obligation to write this. People need this book. And I think when he said that, I kind of got over the mental hurt. It became not about me anymore. Because, when you're doing that,
you put your ego aside.
Totally.
It's not about you.
No. And that was the hardest part because I think it felt like it was about me at first. And I realized it wasn't.
So let's talk about your book and
You are living a life of freedom, and it wasn't always that way. You start the book off by sharing what your early years were like in your childhood with your father and the difficult times that he went through and how that shaped your mindset. And you call it out on yourself very early in the book that as a teenager and, young adult, you were just kind of floating through life.
It was worse than I was a loser. I was a complete.
Okay, I'm not going to call you that.
Some people are floating. I was a disaster.
And you had a wake-up moment when you had your first child on the way. You were working a $15 an hour job, and you had won and it's a very prestigious award, the Sports Photographer of the Year and the Picture of the Year International Contest. And you were hoping for a 10% raise because word had been around the office that the newspaper, when someone was having their first child, would surprise them or be generous with a 10% raise. And you went into your boss and he gave you the talk of, I tried so hard for you, Vincent. I really went to bat for you, but all I could get was the 3%. What was that moment like for you?
It was a turning point moment in my life because I still remember sitting there. I still remember how angry I felt. I remember heat in my body. Like I got really warm. And I looked out into the newsroom and I saw everybody working and I realized at that moment it was over. And I said to him, no matter how hard I work, I said, no matter how many awards I win, because they expected you to work extra, put in picture stories. I was a photographer for a newspaper. They expected above and beyond the hours, and we did it. And we always did. Elizabeth and I both were photographers there, and we both put in so much extra effort, not getting paid for it, just for the heart of it. And to hear that, and then to realize no matter what I do, this is never going to support my family and live the life that I want. And it was just like a brick over the top of the head because it's 10 years I've been working on this career, building it through all the stuff you mentioned when I was younger, and then getting into photography at a really low point in my life because I was a thief and I'd been arrested, and this was like the thing. And to have this dream job, this job, even though it was only paying $15 an hour, I had shot the Super Bowl. I had shot, presidents come to Evansville. I was with them. It was a cool gig. It just didn't pay well. And I was okay with that. But it was when you realized it was never going to go anywhere. At that point, I was like, I'm not going to be able to support my kids. And I said to myself, it's over. I didn't quit that day, but in my head I did.
And before that, you and your wife had been working towards paying down debt, and you had made significant progress. So I want to talk about that piece too, because that really caught my attention, how you guys got married and you worked very diligently to figure out how to have a wedding that you could afford that wouldn't put you into debt. That happened. I think you saved like $400 a month somehow between the
$400 a check we saved. We paid for it all ourselves.
That's amazing. And then very slowly but very quickly after that, the debt started mounting. How did that process happen?
We just became normal. We just started acting like everybody else. I never liked it. I remember when I was young, my brother had a car payment, and then I bought his car from him. And then I had this payment book that every month I had to pay, and I hated owing money. And so then I went away from it. I didn't owe any money. And I went to even college, I didn't owe money. And then with everything, and then all of a sudden we started doing it. We were like, I needed a car because my car was breaking up. We bought a house. And once you start doing it, it's like, a little more doesn't matter.
A little more debt doesn't matter. It just gets rolled in, right?
It just gets rolled in. But then, boom, 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 boom. Now all of a sudden, we want to have a family. We're renovating the basement. I got a car. We got a TV. We got a couch. All this is, on credit. And then Elizabeth gets pregnant. And now she wants to be home. She would love to be home with our son. And that's when this rolled all into, okay, now I need to make more money. Okay, I'll get more money from my job. But then they didn't give it to me. And then I flipped out. So that was.
Yeah. And, I think there is a belief that is pretty pervasive in the United States that if we work hard, we'll be successful. Just work hard. That's the secret. But that wasn't paying off for you.
No, we worked very hard, but we were working for somebody else and they controlled it. And that was when it hit me. I knew nothing about business, nothing. My dad ran his own business, but I didn't pay attention to my dad, like a lot of teenagers, nobody does. I wish I would have, but I didn't know anything about it. I knew to go get a job. I knew that they would support me. And then I looked out in the newsroom. I saw it just all hit me. Everybody was complaining about money. Nobody ever had enough money. Nobody could ever do anything because of money. All these decisions were based by lack of money. And I was like, wow, this is the world that I'm going into if I keep doing this. So it really hit me hard. I went home angry and I called my dad. And I called my dad because he had his own business and I wanted to see if I could work for him on the side. I mean, literally the only reason was if I can make some money with my dad to pay for diapers, to pay for formula and pay for some kid stuff, I can keep making my $3,000 a year with my raise and we'll be okay. And my dad turned me down. So I'm like, my goodness, even my dad's turning me down. Like this is like the low point of my life. But he said something to me that changed my life. He said, you don't want to work for me anyway. You hated working for me last time. He said, I've been trying to tell you this, but you haven't listened. And maybe you'll listen this time. He goes, you have a skill, but you're not using it correctly. And those words really mattered because he said, you've become a really good photographer and you're settling for $32,000 a year. You're settling for what they're willing to pay you. But you literally can go right now when you can go shoot weddings and you can go shoot corporate headshots and you can go shoot sports. You can do anything you want on your own terms, but you're settling for security and benefits. And I was like, to hear that when you're 32 years old is really painful, especially I'm a go-getter and being, kind of just giving in, that was a problem for me. And so I picked up the phone book and I said, okay, I'm going to call different photographers and see if I can second shoot for them for their weddings. And they all turned me down, every one of them. They knew me from the newspaper. My name was in the newspaper for 5 years. They all said no. And I took the phone book and I threw it against the wall and I said, you always hear like, if you can't beat them, join them. I said, well, if you can't join them, we're going to beat them, is what I said. And we're going to start our own business. And I called Elizabeth and I wasn't even scared anymore. At this point, I was angry. I was like, nothing is working out. I need to do this. So that day we decided to start a business, not knowing anything about business.
How did it go from there? Was it smooth sailing?
It was no, of course not. No. First year was brutal. We designed, this is 2005, so it's easy now, but Elizabeth designed our own website in Dreamweaver, which was 3:00 in the morning trying to figure all this stuff out and trying to figure out how to get contracts and clients and how do you price your services and all the mistakes we made. Now, the first year and a half was like, for anybody that's starting, it's supposed to be hard the first couple of years, but it was wonderful. It turned out to be the best decision that we've ever made.
So knowing, and this is what you get into in the book, is how you tell your story first, and then you break it down for others and how they can do it too. So what have you learned in the last 10 years about setting your lifestyle up to have freedom and unhinging from money and the way that money can weigh us down and you call it out. I mean, money is one of the biggest contributors to divorce in our country.
What I learned was it was really nice to know that I don't need much and I don't really care what you think. And those were the two things that got us through it.
Let's back that up. So
yeah.
I don't need much.
Yep.
And I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
So start with, I don't need much. What does that mean?
Well, we lived on $32,000 a year with a baby, and we were generally happy. I wasn't happy with the situation, but I was happy in life. We went to the park, right? And we cooked dinner together, and we played games, and it was wonderful. And we didn't need much more than that. And it wasn't about the car we were driving. It wasn't about the size of the house that we were in. Windows are all the same. The sun still comes through it, right? So I remember sitting in our living room with beautiful sun coming in, like these rays of light. We're laying in the sunshine and we're playing games with Andrew as he's a baby. I'm like, we don't need much more than this. So we never got caught up in the trap of the car and the vacation and the house and the country club and, kinder music and all the things the kids need. We never got caught, gymnastics. We never got caught up in that. So when we realized we can live off of very little, it's all bonus from there. And of course, that was my mindset. It was all bonus. And I'm not saying don't make money. Like, I'm not saying just settle for as little. No, we enjoy making money. I am not able to be generous without money. And I love traveling. But that's bonus. We took 4 months off and we went on the road this year. That is not something that's expected. That's something we have to earn first to go do. And a lot of people.
With freedom comes responsibility. right?
Yeah.
So in order for you to take those 4 months off, you had to do a lot of things responsibly to make that happen.
Yeah. Not only that, we talk about building a lifestyle. It wasn't even that we took it off. We built a business so we could do it while we're doing that. And that's what it was, like the photography thing. So the photography thing launched us away from the newspaper, and we did great. We paid off our house. Everything was going great. We had time freedom, but we had money freedom and we had time freedom, but we didn't have location freedom. Because if you hire me for a shoot, I need to be here. So I started visioning, I'm kind of the dreamer. Elizabeth's the rational one. I'm the dreamer. So she's always got to be like, okay. I keep coming with all the ideas, and she has to shoot down about 80 of them until one really hits. It's kind of the way
she filters your ideas for you.
Oh yeah, and bless her heart. I mean, what she deals with me is ridiculous. I mean, I'm better than I used to be, but I'm kind of relentless at times. And again, like, that's bonus. I don't deserve location freedom, but I'd like to work towards it. It sounds cool. Why not try it? So I'm like, well, location freedom is not going to come from photography. So what can I do that would maybe build a business that would bring that? And I had a lot of people asking me how to build a photography business. How do we do it? All these other photographers are struggling. You guys seem to be doing all this cool stuff. So I started coaching photographers on business, not on photography. I don't want to teach photography, but I like teaching business. So I was teaching business to photographers, and that started growing, and that started growing even more. And that's kind of where the seeds of the book came into it. Then we write the book, and now it's like, okay, well, I'm coaching on this. Now I joined some masterminds. Now I'm running my own masterminds on business. One is the Business of Photography Academy. One is a general total life freedom mastermind. And now, but before that even really started, I'm like, wait a second, if I can have Zoom and I can have internet access and I can have a computer, I can do this from anywhere. That's the location freedom that we want to build. So it came from that vision. I didn't know how we were going to do it, but I knew if that's the foundation of what it needs to be built, now I just got to go build that. So that's what we did. And that's kind of how the location freedom came into it.
So I want to make an observation that you got clear in your head what you wanted, that it was not how you were working and living, that you wanted to have the location freedom. And then a question came in there. How do I? That's a powerful question, because that opened your eyes to start looking for opportunity.
You just point out the key to it, and I'm sure you see this, with your masterminds. It's something where people don't ask enough questions, in my opinion. People will say to me, oh, I love that you get to do that, or I'd love to do that, but they never ask how they can do it. Rarely. Not that never. The right ones do. But a lot of people, I'm sitting here waiting for them to ask me, and they don't do it because they're not curious enough. And I think that comes from school, is my opinion. It comes from, you're not allowed to be curious for 12 to 16 years. You're supposed to listen to what people tell you.
I agree. I totally agree that we are training kids in the school system to sit still, don't ask questions, do what you're told. And it shuts down. Kids are naturally curious. That shuts down that curiosity. And you're absolutely right. In our masterminds, we don't do traditional masterminding. It's all about asking questions and more questions. And we brainstorm questions about the challenge. And sometimes it's the brainstorming of the questions that is more powerful than us sitting there and brainstorming solutions. Almost always.
I'm the same way. And we're the same way. It's an abundant curiosity. And when somebody comes to me and I'll talk to people, I'm like, they're struggling and they'll tell me what they're going to do. I had a conversation last week with somebody, a new podcaster. This is the plan. Didn't ask one question, wasn't curious about anything. I see the pitfalls. I see the struggles. I see what's, not that I know all this stuff, but it's plainly obvious what's going on. Not one question. And I just go, you can't help people that don't want to be helped, is what I've learned. This has been hard for me in terms of coaching because I've wanted to.
You want to help everybody?
Yeah. You can't help people that don't want to be helped. If they don't have the questions, I'm not going to give them the answers because they don't want to hear it. But they will ask once the pain comes. Once it doesn't work, then there's almost this resigned, what do I do? And that's when it starts.
Well, and that, even looking at your story and your trajectory, that's when you started asking questions of how do I and what. And I think you even point this out in the book that as soon as you started looking around, then you saw opportunities to make things work.
But you have to have your eyes open to that. You have to be willing to see it. And the people you surround yourself with was the big part for me. Building a network of people, you talk about Nick Pavlidis and people like that in your life. People that's why I go to so many of these conferences, because I meet people that I don't just meet at my kid's soccer game.
Yeah. And I remember you guys being very clear. We're not here to sit in the meetings, in the sessions. We work the hallways.
Yeah. We meet people.
And you have conversations and you're open and curious.
And we go, where do we go? We went to breakfast. I remember we went to breakfast one time. We went to lunch at the end of the conference, and you don't get to do that online. And you don't get to do that generally in your town. Like most of my friends and business associates do not live here where we live. They're out. So I need to go find them and get the right people. So that's a big part of it, is the network.
Well, so surrounding yourself with people who have the mindset that maybe is the mindset you're trying to create for yourself. Maybe they're a step ahead and you're trying to absorb that mindset. I remember for myself when I first encountered coaching, and I was in a very much of a fixed mindset of, this is my life, this is my career, I'm on this trajectory, I got to just do these things, even though I wasn't happy. And through coaching, I learned that I could ask, what do I want? And just start thinking about, what do I want? That is a huge eye-opening question, because I don't think we think about that most of the time.
Which is sad, because we teach our kids to not ask that question either. It's not about what you want. It's what about mom or dad wants you to do for college when you're 18. Well, you should be a nurse, or you should be this. And I just did a podcast about being 18. The dumbest I've ever been in my life was when I was 18. And you want me to make one of the biggest decisions of my life that might cost the most amount of money outside of maybe buying a house? When I'm 18, I'm a complete moron.
That's a good point.
And we do, and it's like, okay, everything's built up to 17. What are you going to do? What's going to be your career? Like, you're going to change a lot. Like, why is there so much pressure on that right now? And I think it's the most ridiculous thing in the world, because I didn't figure photography out till I was 22 or 23, and I kept changing. Why is it then? And why does it cost so much money at that time? I'm not a fan of it.
No. And one of the things that I think is so important about your book and your work is how you went from crushing debt, $140,000 of debt that you guys accumulated in like a year or 2 years' time, and you wiped it out. And I know you followed Dave Ramsey. In the book, you talk about, you heard this guy on the radio and he was talking about
He was the only one at that. 2005, he was like the only one. There was nobody else like him at that point.
Nobody's talking about this.
No.
So, and you did the debt snowball. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was painful. But it really wasn't. It was one of those things everybody's like, so many people, so many of our friends, they watched us up while we went through it. And they kept, even family members, oh, you only live once. But we had a vision for it. We just talked about it almost nightly, what it would be like when this is gone. The things we can do. When Andrew was 1, we had this vision. We had no money, but what do we want? This was a big question we asked ourselves. What do we want life to look like 10 years from now? Not necessarily work-wise, because, 10 years from now, who knows what's going to be available? So I can't choose, but I know what I want my life to look like. So my oldest son's going to be 24. He might move to Seattle if that's what he chooses to do. I want to be able to be there. If all 3 of our kids move to different places, I want to be financially and time set that I could be there for any of them when we want to be. And maybe that means real estate in those areas. Maybe it means Airbnbs. Maybe, who knows? But I want to think that way. And that's what we did 10 years earlier. We wanted time freedom. We wanted location. We wanted to be able to take a month or 2 off and just travel. So we planned that even when we had no money. How do we build that? First things first, we got to get rid of the debt. So even though it was painful for 3 years, the vision wasn't for those 3 years. It was for the future. And that's why we were able to do it when a lot of people don't want to sacrifice it. That was the big mindset for us.
Well, and the other piece in there is that you guys talked about it daily, about what you wanted and what you were creating. So you held that vision in front of you, and every day you're making progress towards it. And because you're holding that vision in front of you, you're seeing the opportunities to make that happen.
100%.
Yeah. So, and there were plenty of people around you who were not supporting the vision. People telling you just, enjoy life now. Life is short. Lots of messages about that, right?
Just about everybody. And it wasn't even like enjoy life now. There was a little bit of that, but they weren't even enjoying life. They couldn't envision life without credit card and debt. Like basically almost resign. This is the way it is. This is the way it is. Deal with it. You're always going to have a car payment. You're always going to have a house payment. That's just the way it is. And we said, no, I don't want to be like, and I've never wanted to be like everybody else. So it was good for me.
So let's just talk a little bit about just the way it is. I have learned in my life, whenever I hear that is a red flag and we have to question it because a lot of opportunities are being missed as soon as we're settling down and saying, it's just the way it is. We have to tolerate this.
You go to a job. That's the way it is.
Yeah. You keep working harder and maybe you get your 3% raise and maybe some years you don't get a raise because it's just not there. It's just the way it is.
Just be happy that you have a job, right? That's what you'd hear.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for myself, with the business owners that we work with, so many of them come to us because they are working 70, 80 hours a week, slave to the business. And fortunately, they've decided it's not going to be just the way it is because that's usually what triggers them to reach out to us for help. But until that point, they're kind of just numbed into, I guess this is how it's going to be. This isn't what I had in mind when I started my business, but I guess this is how it is because I look around and I see everyone else doing it. This must be what I have to do. And I think there's a real danger by being around other small business owners who are in that mentality because it pulls us right back down into that mentality. So like we teach about taking a 4-week vacation in your business and being away. The business can run without you. It makes money. It grows. And when I share that with some entrepreneurs, the reaction I get is, that's crazy. I could never do that. There's no way. And you see it, the mind just shuts down. Like, no, can't do it. And that's an opportunity to ask, well, how could I do it?
And you're so right, because I think a lot of people think it's not possible. I couldn't just take 4 weeks. That I've always had to do things myself. I'm a control freak. I need to have and what you're talking about is letting go of control, I would imagine, and having other people do things for you. And so you do what you really need to do.
Right.
And you're just giving them a complete mindset shift about that.
But it's bigger than that. It's around deciding what we want, what's important to us, and designing business and life to make that happen and asking the questions, how can I, what opportunities do I have to make this possible? And so I'm just underscoring this because you are living such a powerful example of visioning and asking questions and surrounding yourself with the right people that support that mindset and what that can do for someone.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, it wasn't something that, it's one of those things you just keep putting brick by brick. I didn't know it can lead to this stuff. I just knew it needed to lead better to than I was at. And then what happens is when you get momentum and you get some success, you realize, oh, we can keep going because you don't really want to be satisfied. Like I want to be content, but not satisfied. I'm happy where I'm at today, but I don't want to stay here. I want to keep getting better. So then you realize, then all of a sudden you look back, how do we do all this stuff? And it's only because of that. But it wasn't because not that if I needed this, it would have been a lot of stress to get there. It's kind of like money.
So I want you to break this down for us in just a minute. We're going to pause here and we have an opportunity I want to share with our profit designers. And then we're going to come back and I want you to break down for us the steps in your book, Freelance to Freedom, that you show that people can go through to really get to freedom.
Sure.
I've been thinking about something. Would you buy your own business? I mean, knowing what you know, with all your experience and inside knowledge, would you buy it? And if so, what would you be willing to pay for it? And would you be happy leaving you as the manager to run it for you? I'm guessing these questions might be making you feel a little bit on the spot. Why is that? Well, for most of us, our businesses, where we spend most of our time and all of our time thinking about, represent the single largest investment of our lives, and possibly next to our home, our greatest asset. It's the source of our income, the storehouse of our creative talent and our relationships, and it's the determinant of our future freedom and prosperity. This business, your business, is too important for you not to give it the best chance of success. And that's why I'm excited to share with you a special course that's being offered by Sir Stephen Wilkinson, Entrepreneur as Investor, How to Calculate Your Stock Price. Now, you may remember Sir Stephen from episode 41, and if he got you thinking and wondering about calculating your stock price, you're going to want to check this out. His course is starting September 5th, and there's only 15 spots available at the time that I'm recording this. Sir Stephen is offering a special savings for our profit designers. You can get into the course at 50% savings by using code TAP2019, TAP 2019. To access this course and learn all the details, go to tapthepotential.com/investor. Okay, Vincent, we're back. So you have some steps in your book to get from freelance to freedom. And I really encourage our profit designers to buy your book and read it. But while we have you here, I would love for you to walk us through what are the steps.
Yeah, I mean, I have it in 5 stages. That's the way we've built it out, as we lived it, as we've helped other people do it. And the first one is escaping the seeds of discontent. And 80% of people don't like what they're doing in their jobs. So we walk through that in terms of, I talk about Abraham Lincoln in the book in the very beginning of it. And he talked about even 150, 200 years ago, people worked for themselves. It was almost a negative to go work for somebody else. It was almost looked like it was beneath people. Like you basically learned from somebody else. You took up shop at somebody only so then you can go do your own thing. And we've switched so much now that we accept that we're going to work for somebody else. And we're going to now go by their rules. And that's where the discontent comes from. It doesn't usually come from business owners because business owners can change. If you own your own business, you can make changes. When I worked for somebody else, I couldn't. I would come to them with my ideas and they would tell me to buzz off. That doesn't go. So when I find an entrepreneur that's discontent, they need a mindset shift, like what you do, right? Exactly what you just talked about. But what I see is even way before that are employees that are just stuck. So that's the first part, is figuring that out and figuring out, like we just talked about earlier, like what do you really want from your life? Not really from your work, but what do you want your work, like you guys talk about, what do you want your work to do for your life? And that's the first part. And the second part is, it's become almost cliche now, but even when I wrote The Side Hustle, which is the second phase, you didn't even hear that word as much. And that was a couple of years ago. Now side hustle is everywhere. But I truly believe that that is the next thing, is you need that business to propel you to where you want to get to. It's self-employment, to me, is key to this whole thing. Without it, you don't have the time freedom, you don't have the location freedom, and you probably don't have the money freedom. They say the majority of millionaires are self-employed, even though millionaires only make up a small percentage of society. But most of the millionaires are self-employed. Where does that come from? Running your own business. So the second stage is building your side business from the very beginning, from not even knowing what an idea is to making it something that is profitable.
So do you recommend for someone doing that they do that on the side while they have another job? And
Yes.
then, so you don't just stop your job, quit, and then build a business?
Sometimes people have to. I think everyone's individual. We work with, it depends on your mind again. I work with somebody that has a hard time with it, even though they have 6 figures of an emergency fund. I'm like, quit your job today. You have the idea, you have the money, you don't have the debt. There's no reason, but there's security holding them back. So it depends on the person. I think for the most part, I would build it while I was working for a period of time. But the problem with that is there's that security. When they get that raise, they go, I just see human nature. They stop working on the side business because the security jumps back in, the comfort jumps back in. That's why I like when people get fired. I really do, because it means that they're actually going to have to go do something now. And you will probably not do it without getting fired. So whenever somebody comes to me like, oh no, I just got fired, and even though they've been talking to me about their business, I go, congratulations. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you get to actually do what you want to do. You were just too afraid to do it yourself. They made that decision for you. Now go do it.
Yeah. So I have a little story around that. When I started, I had my full-time job that I was discontent in. Imagine that. And I learned about coaching, and I decided I'm going to switch and become a coach. And what I did is I structured my schedule at work where I could work 4 10-hour days and have
Mondays off. And I built my coaching business over the course of a year on Mondays. So if people wanted to work with me, they can only work with me on Monday. I was only available on Monday. And it worked. But here's the deal. I was scared to let go of the full-time job. And I got pregnant and I knew I could not be a good mom and continue to work at that full-time job because that job really drained me. I would come home every day like it was sucking life out of me. And I knew I could not be a good mom. So that was the point that forced me out of that safety and security. That's a trap, really. And I really feel like that was the best thing that ever happened to me because I quit my job after she was born. That was it. I was on my own. And then I had to make it work. There was no other way.
That's exactly when it happens. And, I say to everybody, I try to, I want to raise the unemployment rate. That's my job. Everybody wants to lower. I want to raise it. I want more people to quit because I say this is happening in the photography world. I bet you will come back to me and you will say, I wish I did it sooner. And they all say, no, that sounds too scary. And I remember the first time I'd say that, my friend Joe Appel, who's a photographer here in Pittsburgh, and he called me and he goes, I just said it. And I said, what are you talking about? I haven't talked to him in like 9 months. For 2 years, he's like, I cannot imagine saying I wish I would have done it sooner. He quit his job, went full time in his business, put all of his effort into that instead of working for somebody else. And he goes, I woke up this morning and I said to myself, I wish I would have done it sooner. He thought about me and he called me to tell me that he had just said it. And I hear it over and over again. I wish I would have done it sooner. So that gives me the conviction to keep letting people know, like, you will make it happen if you need to make it happen.
Yeah. Okay. Stage 3. What's stage 3?
Yeah, that's the optimal freelance. That's when you start taking something that's okay and has holes in the boat and you start patching it up and building a better boat. It's when you start optimizing your time, you start getting better with all your systems, all your processes, everything that you're doing. Like you're way more efficient. You make more money, you spend less time on the work. On the same amount of more money, less time working is phase 3. And I don't say this as a Pollyanna thing, like, oh, get rich quick in 90 days. That's not the way it works. Stage 1 is hard. Stage 2 is almost as hard. But when you go to 3, you start making more money, you start needing less time to do it, and you have money in the bank or you've gotten rid of your debt. So what happens there is you're like, wait a second, what do I do with all this time? I've got time now and I don't need the money as much. That's when you go into stage 4, which is a life of freedom, because that's when you start really optimizing. That's when you start saying, like, you get new ideas, because time freedom leads to mental freedom. And when you have mental freedom, you can go for a 3-hour walk and come up with an idea that makes you as much money a day as you used to make in a year, which is what happened to us. So with an online course. But that only became because I had the whole afternoon just to go for a walk. And I go to the library some days, I just sit there the whole day with a pad and a pen, and all I do is write down ideas. Close my eyes, take a little nap, write down another idea. That's freedom. That's time freedom. That mental freedom leads to that life of freedom. And then that goes to phase 5, which is time, money, location. Then you take all that stuff and you can now help a whole lot of other people do it the way we do it, online, wherever. Because if you become an expert in a field, other people want to learn from you. Success brings success. So now you build other income streams off of that. And then you could do that from anywhere. Money's not a problem. And you control your life completely. That's basically the 5 stages of it.
So the time freedom brings mental freedom.
Yeah.
That's a huge tipping point because, in my experience, we spend way too much time in our lives doing the things that are worth $100 an hour or even $1,000 an hour as an entrepreneur. But it's busyness, busy, busy, busy. And if we never make those choices that start to put time freedom into our lives, we never have the time for what I call the $10,000 an hour ideas and activities. And it could be that, you're off for 4 weeks and you're taking a walk and you're not thinking about work, you're not doing anything, but it's a bolt from the blue idea that comes to you. And that's the next big thing.
That's all you got to do at that point. And you have the time to do it, and you don't have the money-wise stress to do it, and you have the connections to make it happen. You're exactly right. It's the 80-20 rule. I'm not sure if you read the book.
Oh, yes. Marshall. Oh, yes. I love the 80-20 rule.
What you just said reminded me a lot of that. And, even the $10 an hour work we do, right? $15 an hour work that we do because only we can do it.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and I tell you what, with our team, one of the things that I'm becoming even more mindful of is making sure that each of our team members is working from their highest value, from their gifts. And anything that is
something that they're doing, whether it's worth $10 an hour or $100 or $1,000 an hour, if they're doing it and it's not from their gifts, we're not using them in the best way. And I believe that we all need that space to work from our gifts and that mental freedom to get there. So that's what I'm excited about now, is watching what's happening on our team as the whole team becomes more conscious of doing.
I love it. I love what you're doing. This is fantastic.
So let's go back to your book, Freelance to Freedom. I know you have a gift for our listeners. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, I recorded the audiobook, and I'm in a mastermind with John Lee Dumas, who runs the podcast Entrepreneur on Fire, and we were talking about it, and he said, why don't you just give it away? And I said, I didn't think about I hear about give away a chapter. I was like, okay. So I went and I recorded it myself, and I recorded the entire audiobook, edited it. I just liked the process of doing it. It's something I should have outsourced, right? You talk about what's worth your time, but it's my voice. It's a very dear project to me. So I'm like, I can't have somebody else record it. I got to do the editing. I got to do it myself. So I recorded it, and I just said, we're going to give it away for free. So we've made it available for free for anybody that wants to download. So you don't even have to buy the book.
Incredibly generous of you. And that's not a $10 an hour task, because you, the author, are reading your own work. I would much rather listen to the author read his or her work than a professional, person who does audiobooks.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like, it's my stories, right? It's me talking about getting arrested. I'm like, I cannot imagine somebody else saying those words, talking about my kids, my son, Andrew, with somebody else's voice. And I'm like, no, I'm recording this. Because we had people say, like, we can have these people do it. I'm like, no, as awful as my voice is, I'm going to record it. And sorry, you got to deal with it, but that's my voice.
So how can our listeners get your audiobook?
Yeah, the website's totallifefreedom.com, and it's /F2F book with the number 2, F2Fbook.com. I'll send you the link if you want to share with everybody. And
we will put it in our show notes. And I also want to let our listeners know you have a podcast.
Yes. I know I sent you the link. It is a daily short form solo show, which I'm having a ton of fun with.
And I've listened to some of the episodes. These are short stories, very entertaining. And I want to give you the opportunity to share the story about the Pope.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. I had a feeling you were going to ask me about the Pope.
Of course. You told me to listen to that one. That was a good one.
I was a beginning photographer. I wasn't even making any money yet, but I was working as a waiter at a place called the Spare Rib on Long Island in New York, where I lived. And the Pope was coming to town, and I wanted to photograph the Pope so badly, but I didn't have press credentials. I wasn't a pro at all, but I knew what day it was. And I asked my boss if I could have the day off. And he said, no, they're short staffed that day. I came back I asked again, and again he said no. And I was being very persistent, as I can be. And I see the next day I go watch the news, the Pope's coming 2 days from now. So I go back a third day, the day before the Pope's coming, and I say, I really need tomorrow off. And my boss yelled at me, because now he's annoyed with me, and he goes, what do you need tomorrow off? And this is in the middle of the restaurant. This is with everybody, eating right by the head table. And I yelled back at him, like I said, I need to go shoot the Pope. And his eyes just go like wide open. And all I heard was like, everybody stop eating, like silverware just dropping. And I look around, I'm like, why is everybody looking at me? They're all staring at me with this horrified look. And I didn't get it. And I looked at his face, and his mouth is still wide open. I said, oh, no. I need to go photograph the Pope. And he was like, oh, thank goodness. So I totally freaked everybody out, and everybody went back to normal. And that was my shoot the Pope story.
So on your Total Life Freedom podcast, these are small life lessons, or big life lessons, but small snippets from your own life and your own experience that you're sharing as you've made the journey from freelance to freedom. I like it because I think it's a great way for us in our day-to-day, we're hunkered down doing our thing, to have that opportunity to listen, like shows like Profit by Design, Total Life Freedom, to listen to a higher level mindset and to be reminded, okay, we're here right now and we're working towards something greater. So I want to just say that your podcast is another great addition to supporting entrepreneurs out there who are working towards something greater and recognizing where I am right now is not where I'm going to stay.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's true. It's the type of thing where you think you're going to get there. Oh, when I only get there. And then when you get there, you realize, oh, there's still more to do. So it never ends. I'll be 89 and I'll still be challenged with something to grow, because I don't want to get complacent. So that's what it's about.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Vincent.
Thanks so much. This is great.
Are you ready to be the leader you need to be to have the business that gives you your life back? If so, you may be a good fit for our small group coaching program at Tap the Potential. You can apply directly by going to profitgift.com. All one word, profitgift.com. What are you waiting for? Your life is waiting for you.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.